Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In this video, we're going to be discussing Lord Voldemort and his signature spell, the killing curse, Avada Kedavra. More specifically, we're going to be discussing the colour of his signature spell, and exploring why it is paired with such sinister looking hues of green. Ever since I first read the books, I took notice of the different colours that spells produced, but never really thought much of it. We know that Expelliarmus is red, Patronuses are white, and that Avada Kedavra is green, and that's because it's repeated over and over. However, it recently occurred to me that there must be some rationale behind the iconic colours used in the books. The frequent clash of red and green between Voldemort and Harry must be symbolic in some way. What do these jets of light mean? Before we delve into this further, let's take a brief look at the backstory of Avada Kedavra. The first thing that you need to know about Avada Kedavra is that it is perhaps the most sinister of the unforgivable curses, 3 of the most dark and powerful spells known to the wizarding world. The unforgivable curses are tools of the dark arts, and generally only used by the darkest and most sadistic witches and wizards, a category that Voldemort fits into perfectly. Avada Kedavra, also known as the killing curse, serves a simple purpose. It puts an end to the victim's life. If you want to kill your victim, then this is the spell to use, and it's known to produce a blindingly intense green bolt of light right before the victim simply drops dead. The biological reason for how the victim dies is not clear, but there are 2 existing theories. The first claiming that the victim's internal organs cease to function after being struck, and the second claiming that the soul of the victim is magically ripped from their body. There was a flash of blinding green light and a rushing sound, as though a vast, invisible something was soaring through the air. Instantaneously, the spider rolled over onto its back, unmarked but unmistakably dead. There it is again, green light, and there seems to be a common theme between the colour green and spells that are generally considered to be evil. We also see this with Mort. Then he realised it was a colossal skull, comprised of what looked like emerald stars, with a serpent protruding from its mouth like a tongue. As they watched, it rose higher and higher, blazing in a haze of greenish smoke, etched against the black sky like a new constellation. With that being said, it would be all too easy to just make the assumption that green equals evil, and because Avada Kedavra is an evil spell, that it would assume the colour green. However, I think that there's more to it than that. Fortunately, this topic is somewhat touched on by J.K. Rowling. Green has long had a supernatural connection in the UK. Superstition says that it ought to be worn with care. The fairies are supposedly possessive of it, as it is their proper colour. It ought never to be worn at weddings, due to a further association with misfortune and death. Green is the colour of much dark magic, of the dark mark, of the luminescent potion in which Voldemort conceals one of his Horcruxes, of many dark spells and curses, and of Slytherin House. For these reasons, green seems like it would have been an obvious choice for Rowling when choosing a colour to assign to the spell that represents death. And as for misfortune, I can't think of anything less fortuitous than dying. Assigning the colour green to Avada Kedavra and other spells like it allowed Rowling to create a sort of dichotomy of internal colour symbolism. These 2 conflicting worlds were chiefly represented by Voldemort's green Avada Kedavra and Harry's red Expelliarmus. Very much unlike green, red has an almost unspoken but seemingly implicit element of warmth, comfort, and security, and so it seems fitting that Harry's go-to spell, Expelliarmus, would exude these almost contrasting characteristics. One thing that I think is worth mentioning, however, is that green is a very diverse colour and can actually come across in many different ways according to the respective hue. Avada Kedavra, at least in the films, sometimes looks almost turquoise, which to me doesn't exude the same feelings of death and misfortune commonly associated with a darker, more sinister looking green. While darker hues of green commonly represent things like death, greed, ambition, and wealth, yellowy greens are more representative of things like jealousy, sickness, and cowardice. And just to make things extra confusing, olive green is a colour traditionally considered to represent peace, an association driven from the symbol of the olive branch in Egyptian mythology. Colors are a tricky part of storytelling because often there is so much underlying symbolism to be uncovered. For this reason, authors should always be careful not to arbitrarily choose colors, as so much meaning, whether intentional or unintentional, can be derived from them. In short, green was chosen for Avada Kedavra because of its associations with death, and red was chosen for Expelliarmus because of its contrasting nature with the green of Avada Kedavra. However, these color decisions only work for some aspects of the story. For example, Harry Potter, the hero himself, has green eyes, while the horrifying, unforgivable curse known as Crucio is red. Harry certainly isn't evil, nor does he represent death, and Crucio is anything but warm. These two color choices directly contradict the duality of Harry Potter's suggested color symbolism, and that's why when it comes to colors, things just aren't so black and white. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to support the channel. Until next time, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.